Today, we're really going beneath the surface, looking at the raw reality of risk in places most people never see. We're exploring the hidden beauty, yes, but also the stark, unforgiving nature of vertical caves when things go wrong. Absolutely. That pole board's the dark, the unknown, it's strong, but the sources we're looking at today, they're sobering. Detailed accounts of 3 specific fatal incidents, and they really force you to confront how thin that line is between adventure and, well, disaster. Yeah, sometimes it comes down to millimeters of rock or one wrong piece of gear or just the temperature dropping a few degrees. Exactly. And that's our mission here for you listening. We're going deep into these 3 tragedies, Cabalo Cave, Banshee Hole, and Ellison's Cave, because they show different kinds of failure. It's not just one thing. Right. We've got geology turning treacherous, we have gear and preparation failures, and then environmental factors just overwhelming people. And digging into this, it's not just about caving safety. You know, it's about understanding those known unknowns in any situation where the stakes are high. We look closely at the specific facts, the choices made that broke the safety chain. It's about seeing how quickly that margin for error just vanishes underground. So let's start where the Earth itself became the hazard. Cabalo Cave, New Mexico, 1994. Okay, Cabalo Cave, February 5th, 1994. The context is really important here. You've got Leland Smith, a former police officer, really dedicated volunteer type, Ray, and Steve Peer, an experienced gamer. They're leading a youth group. It sounds, safe, routine, experienced people in charge. And the sources hammer this home Cabalo was seen as a safe cave. Standard route, lots of traffic, beginner friendly, not some wild, unexplored place. No, definitely not. It was a well-trodden path, which makes what happened next even more shocking. How does a safe place suddenly turn deadly? So what did it happen? They were on their way out. The last bit was this narrow vertical chimney section. Pretty standard caving stuff, full of big boulders called breakdown rock. So rock that's fallen from the ceiling or walls over time. Exactly. Often wedged together. Some pieces become stable, part of the route. And the failure point here was one specific, large, sloped slab of this breakdown, right near the top of the chimney. It had been used as a foothold for years, seemingly solid and totally. And Leland Smith, the volunteer, was right there, giving one of the last students a little boost up, helping them over the slab to get out. Just a helpful hand, simple gesture. But that tiny bit of upward pressure, that was it. A huge piece of that slab, we're talking hundreds of pounds, just broke free instantly. Oh, wow. Leland had 0 time. It hit him, knocked him straight down into the chimney, and then a second, even bigger piece fell right on top of him. Pinned him completely. The accounts make it sound, well, final. Instantaneous. It was. Catastrophic injuries, legs, spine, neck. He was gone immediately. Steve Peer and the others knew right away he was deceased, and those boulders were jammed so tight there was no moving them by hand. Okay, so this is where it gets technically interesting, right? Why did this supposedly stable rock fail? That's the aha moment, isn't it? It really is. When the recovery teams and geological experts looked closely, they found it wasn't just loose rock. That wasn't the whole story. What else could it be? Rock is rock, right? Especially if it's been stable for years. Well, that's the deceptive part. They discovered the slab wasn't just held by its weight or friction. It was held mainly by a thin layer of mineral deposit, something called flowstone cementing. Flowstone, like stalactites and stuff. Exactly like that. Water, rich in calcium carbonate, flows over surfaces, leaves behind this hard mineral deposit. In this chimney, it acted like a thin, brittle glue, holding that massive boulder to the surrounding rock. So it looked solid, part of the bedrock almost, but it was really just glued on by this thin mineral layer. Precisely. The integrity of that hundreds of pound slab was basically depending on this mineral crust. And flowstone, while strong if you push straight down on it, compression, right, but is very weak if you apply force sideways or upwards, what engineers call shear stress. Leland's slight boost was just enough shear force to shatter that fragile cement layer, turning solid ground into a falling weapon. That's terrifying. You can't see that weakness. Yeah, you can. It's microscopic chemistry over geological time. And the situation got even more complicated during the recovery. How so? Because Leland Smith was a former police officer, he was legally carrying a concealed firearm. A loaded semi-automatic pistol in a shoulder holster. You're kidding. So before they could even start trying to move the rocks, exactly, a law enforcement officer had to go into that unstable, collapsed chimney where rock had just fallen, specifically to safely retrieve a loaded weapon. Talk about adding layers of risk. Unbelievable, and the area was still dangerous, wasn't it? Oh, absolutely. The whole section was unstable. The recovery team had to bring in shoring equipment, like you see in construction, to prop up the overhead slabs before they could even work. And even then, even with the shoring, while they were carefully dismantling the rock pile, another piece came loose and fell, hitting a team member. Luckily, just a minor bruise, but it shows the whole area was compromised. That flowstone failure destabilized everything around it. So, the big lesson from Cabalo: even familiar places aren't guaranteed safe. Hidden geology can just betray you. Yeah, you're trusting physics and chemistry you can't see, and sometimes that trust is misplaced. Which leads us to the next case, where it wasn't the geology but the gear itself that failed. Banshee Hole, Tennessee, 1992. Okay, Banshee Hole. Sounds ominous. A remote cave, right? Big vertical drop at the entrance. A serious one. 95-foot entrance shaft. The sources are very clear. This place was not for beginners. Definitely needed vertical caving skills, but the group wasn't all experienced. That's the core problem. One member of the four-man team had basically zero practical vertical caving experience. His knowledge came from books, practicing knots on, like, trees in his backyard. Okay, that's not ideal for a 95-foot climb. Not even close. But he was apparently very enthusiastic, volunteered to go first down the shaft, and crucially, volunteered to be the first one to climb back out. Enthusiasm without experience. Yeah, dangerous combo in that environment. Deadly. The disaster happened during the ascent. Climbing out one by one, they were using standard gear and mechanical ascenders, Jumars, things like that, which slide up the rope, but grip when you put weight on them. Use your legs mostly. Right, pushing up with foot loops. But here's the fatal deviation. He didn't have a proper seat harness. Wait, the main harness that takes all your weight, correct? A proper seat harness wraps around your legs and pelvis, putting the load on your strong bones. He didn't have one. Instead, he improvised. He made a makeshift chest harness out of plain nylon webbing wrapped around his upper body. Oh no, chest harnesses are usually just for stability, right? Not for taking your full weight. Exactly. And the critical mistake was clipping this improvised chest harness directly to the main rope and his ascenders. So his entire body weight, maybe 180 pounds, wasn't on his legs or hips. It was all concentrated right on his chest, his ribs. That sounds incredibly dangerous from the start, like setting a trap. It was. He started climbing slowly, using the ascenders and foot slings. But it must have been incredibly awkward and inefficient. He got stuck just 10 feet from the top. Right at the lip, that edge you have to pull yourself over. A tricky maneuver, even with the right gear. Absolutely. And with his weight crushing his chest through that webbing, every time he tried to pull up or even just adjust his position, then tightened, tighter and tighter. Nylon webbing has no give. It just constricts under load. It was biting into him. I can't imagine the panic. 90 feet up, realizing your own gear is trapping you. What did the others hear? It's chilling. Huh? His headlamp stopped moving. The only sound coming down the shaft was this. Strained, shallow breathing. The harness was squeezing his chest so tight he couldn't get a full breath. He was literally being suffocated by his own setup. Positional asphyxia, can we break that down? How does that kill someone so quickly? Okay, so positional asphyxia here means the constant crushing pressure stops the chest and diaphragm from moving properly. You just can't inhale full like someone standing on your chest. Pretty much. Plus, hanging like that, especially in a constricting harness, can mess with blood flow suspension trauma. Blood pools in your legs, less gets back to the heart and brain. So, lack of oxygen and poor circulation. A deadly combination. A very rapid one. Lack of oxygen knocks you out fast, maybe minutes. Then the poor circulation leads to cardiac arrest. He was caught in a self-tightening loop that was shutting his body down. Did anyone try to help from below? 2 cavers tried climbing up to him, desperate to help push him over the lip or release the tension. But apparently any movement just seemed to make the webbing constrict more. So they had to call for outside help. Yeah, they managed to get a call out, but it took about 40 minutes for a specialized rescue team to arrive. They quickly set up a pulley system to haul him up. Hey, the moment they pulled him over the lip, relieving that pressure, his body just went limp. He was pronounced dead shortly after, around 1:52 a.m. Yeah, official cause, positional asphyxia. The harness killed him. It's such a stark reminder about respecting your gear. Book smarts mean nothing if you improvise with your life support system 90 feet off the ground. It really hammers home why a seat harness is critical. Compromise that, and you open the door to these very specific, horrific mechanical failures. Okay, from geology and gear, we now move to a situation where the environment itself, combined with a series of errors, led to tragedy. Ellison's Cave, Georgia, 2011. Ellison's Cave is a whole different scale. We're talking the 12th deepest cave in the U.S., massive drops like the Fantastic Pits is nearly twice the height of the Statue of Liberty. A serious undertaking. And the group, 10 University of Florida students. Young group, out celebrating a birthday. But their preparation, well, it seemed lacking from the start. What went wrong initially? It was a cascade. They were apparently dressed pretty casually. They'd camped nearby the day before, felt the cold setting in, especially hiking up Pigeon Mountain to the cave entrance. But nobody brought extra warm clothing. Big mistake for a cave environment, especially in winter. Huge. Cave air is stable, maybe cool, but the water is the real issue. Ellison's cave water is around 56 degrees Fahrenheit, even in summer. In winter conditions, brutally cold, especially if you get wet. And they made another critical error before even going in, right? Yes, the one the survivors apparently regretted most. They intentionally left their cell phones behind. No way to call for help quickly. So, poor clothing choices, no communication, setting themselves up. What was the trigger? Something small, initially. The student's backpack slipped and fell down a shaft called the warm-up pit. Warm-up pit sounds okay. Deceptive name. It's 125 feet deep, and crucially, it has a roaring waterfall cascading down it. So, not warm at all, very, very cold down there. And the backpack had essential stuff in it, and someone decided to go get it. Grant Lockenbach, the 20-year-old leader. Friends apparently felt uneasy, urged caution, but he was determined to retrieve the pack. He started rappelling down into the waterfall, straight into it. He was immediately soaked by that freezing 56-degree water. The shock must have been immense. Water pulls heat from your body incredibly fast, like 25 times faster than air. He started shivering violently, almost instantly, losing strength and coordination right away, and then a mechanical problem hit. About halfway down, he reported hearing a jolting sound from his gear. He got tangled in the rope, couldn't move his descent device, couldn't adjust, and the intense cold was making his fingers numb, clumsy. So he's stuck, soaked, freezing 60 feet down a waterfall, and communication just broke down. The roar of the water drowned out his shouts. His teeth were chattering uncontrollably. His speech became slurred. He went from functional to basically incoherent in just minutes. Oh, God. And then someone else went down. Michael, hearing Grant's faint cries, made that split-second decision to help. He started down the same rope, an impulsive, brave, but ultimately tragic choice. He got hit by the same conditions, instantly. Soaked by the waterfall, tangled up with Grant. Now you have two people stuck together on one rope, both rapidly succumbing to hypothermia, and the group above. Still no phones. Total nightmare. Panic set in. Some of them finally decided to run back down the mountain on a 30-minute trip just to get their phones and call 911. That call finally went out at 2:19 p.m. But back in the pit, time was running out fast. Extremely fast. Hypothermia is insidious. It doesn't just make you feel cold. It drains your energy, slows your heart rate, weakens your breathing. That initial intense shivering uses up massive amounts of energy, and once it stops, your core temperature plummets. How long did it take? Reports suggest that within about 30 minutes of becoming entangled and soaked in that freezing water, Grant and Michael's voices just stopped. They lost consciousness, and rescuers. They arrived and faced an incredibly dangerous situation themselves, but by the time they reached the two students at 3:30 p.m., they were hanging lifelessly on the rope. It shows how one small thing, dropping a backpack, can escalate so fast when combined with poor prep and a harsh environment. Exactly. Leaving the phones wasn't just an oversight, it directly translated into a fatal delay. The cold water didn't give him that extra hour. Every decision compounded the risk. Okay, let's pull these three terrible events together. Cabalo, Banshee Hole, Ellison's. What's the common thread here? I think it's the specificity of the risk. It wasn't just caving is dangerous. In each case, it was very particular detail that proved fatal. Something that might be minor above ground becomes absolutely critical underground. Right, Cabalo. The hidden weakness of flowstone geology. Banshee Hole. The precise mechanical failure of an improvised chest harness under load. Ellison's. The specific physics of cold water exposure combined with entanglement and isolation. And it highlights those known unknowns that cavers or anyone in high-risk fields must anticipate. The potential instability of breakdown, the absolute necessity of correct harness function, the devastating speed of hypothermia in water. You have to plan for these specific failure modes. So for you listening, the relevance goes way beyond caves, doesn't it? Absolutely. Any complex system, any challenging environment, you need to respect its unique challenges. Scrutinize your equipment. Understand how it can fail, not just if it works. And that lesson from Banshee hole improvisation often kills your safety margin. Don't let enthusiasm or wanting to cut corners override basic safety protocols and proper training. Yeah, enthusiasm is great, but it's no substitute for competence and the right tools used correctly. We've seen the power of geology, the consequences of bad engineering choices, and the speed of environmental factors. So the recap: Cabalo's crushing rock hidden by minerals, Banshee hole's deadly harness improvisation leading to asphyxia, and Ellison's rapid hypothermia fueled by cold water and cascading errors. 3 very different paths to tragedy. They're stark lessons in how quickly the safety net can disappear in demanding environments like caves. The underground offers amazing experiences, but it demands rigorous preparation and respect. Which brings us to a final thought for you. Considering these distinct failures, geological surprise, mechanical breakdown, environmental assault, think about your own life, your work, your routines. What hidden risk might you be accepting right now in something you consider safe just because it's familiar or well-traveled? What unseen flaw, what potential system failure, what unacknowledged environmental factor might be waiting